Alright, ladies and gents, hello, welcome back. Took a couple of attempts to get the stream started, but now that it is started, we are catching up on where we left off the flight. So we are not too far, we're now within the FIR of Samara, I believe. No, I'm sorry, I'm lying. Waypoint Kunin, where we are, is actually within the well, I'll tell you, we're past Kazakhstan, we're well in Russia. Waypoint Kunin is in the Samara FIR, which I believe should be controlled by Ural. However, they haven't asked for a contact me, and I'm not entirely sure if I should now contact them or not. We're just gonna check at the moment. No, I'm kind of out of Ural, so I'm in Samara. Ural is maybe around Yekaterinburg. Good, so we are now inbound and around position Gedpa. That's where we're going to start calling Moscow. So far we've been keeping an eye now on our GPS navigation. It's been a little bit sketchy, it's gone on and off a couple times, but GPS primary is now back. That's what we're going to be using for the rest of our flight, and we'll just keep an eye to make sure that that we don't lose it. Good. So let's get started on our arrival plan. First thing we need to know is we kind of need to know the weather. I think that's a given. So we're gonna go ahead, go to the ATC menu here. We're gonna request. Maybe it's not AOC menu. I'm sorry. We're gonna request an arrival ATC, and hopefully that's gonna come up for us shortly. Interesting thing about going to some of the Moscow airports, at least these days we don't really use metric, but there was a time when we used metric altimetry along with QFE operations. So the levels and altitudes we were cleared for were based on a height above the ground and not altitude. So could be. Used to be quite interesting. Honestly, I think it's fair in saying that I prefer what we have now. You know, there we go. Let's get the ATIS. Just a simple feet and QNH, so you have altitudes and no metric altimetry. Everyone's using regular altitude and QNH and all that stuff. So we think we've received the message now. Still no information. Alright, so I guess maybe I'm not doing something right. For this we have our friends at Navigraph. They're going to sort it out. Let's take a look what Navigraph has to say. Right, so Navigraph tells me that we're now not entirely far away. I'm not entirely sure why you're not seeing Navigraph. You should be able to see that window. Just give me a second, please. There we go. That's my Navigraph window. We're still in Tashkent, but let's get rid of that. In Moscow, the weather we are expecting wind 190 at 3 meters per second. It's varying between 160 and 220. 999 broken at 1,600 meters IRL. Let's see if it's going to be in meters or feet. It's 1 degree, so not quite cold for the operations. Colder. We may end up using some engine anti-ice, and if the runway is wet, which I think it might be 190. This runway assessment code seems that it's wet. Altimeter is 1016, and there's going to be no significant change. There's an ATIS published. There is no ATIS published, which is why we couldn't get it. So, based on this weather, there's a couple things we can talk about. If you are the runway assessment codes, I'm going to write that down on the scratch pad. We can take a look at it together. So it said runway 13, right, R13R, sorry, so let me not get ahead of myself so I can tell you all what the actually going down. R13R 190050 190050. Okay, so I don't know immediately off the top of my head. If you have in your possession something called the state of the runway decoder, you'll be able to decode this message. So basically what this is an implementation of how to tell pilots what the runway is like where they are. So how that's done exactly is you know, you listen to the terminal area forecast and tell you, oh, the runway is wet, covered in 22 meters of 2 millimeters of rain or frost or whatever. But how are you gonna disseminate this information over ACARS or over a METAR for someone who's about to start the flight? So that's basically what they have worked out. Bear in mind, this is slightly old now because over time we've come up with a different way of telling you what the state of the runway is like. So we're going to decode this. I have in my possession sort of like documentation that kind of tells me how this works. Also tells me about runway visual range and just basically everything to figure out how to read it. So let's go ahead and let's get right in there. So if you can see this clearly, R13R basically stands for, that's what you see there, R13R / 190050. So R13R, the R at the beginning is runway, so they're specifically talking about runway 13 right. That's a slash. So if you've got state of runways, multiple runways, you'll see multiple of those. So R13R, state of the runway, R13L left, you know, multiple runways and so forth. So this one is specifically talking about runway 13 right. And what that tells me immediately is the probability of it being runway 13 right in use is quite high, because that's probably why they're giving us the information anyways. It's still a little way to figure it out. I mean, of course, if you get closer and then they decide to change the plan, there's really nothing you can do about it. The first letter after the slash, that discusses the type of runway deposit. So what is it that has, what is it that's on the runway? In our case, number 1 refers to damper. The second number, which is number 9, shows how many percentage of the runway is covered. So if you got the number 1, you would say it's less than 10%. If you get the number 2, it's between 11% and 25%. Number 5 is between 26 and 50, and the number 9 is between 51 to 100%. So already we know now runway 13 right is damp between 50 to 100%. So as far as I'm concerned, the whole runway is damp, even if it's 50%, the whole runway. We're gonna err inside of additional caution. The next one tells you about the depth of the deposit. The 2 double zeros means it's less than 1 millimeter. But they're different numbers. So 92 means 10, 93 means 15. So you see why we actually kind of need to have a decoder available, because I don't understand why 96 means 30 and why 97 means 35. But that's just the way it is. And the last 2 numbers at the back is a friction coefficient or a braking action. So the number here, is probably friction coefficient. We've got number 50. So then we need to go and see what 50 means. So number 50 means 40 and above, and as a measured friction coefficient means that the surface condition is good. So as far as I know, only Russia and maybe a few other post-Soviet Union countries still use this format. The world has essentially moved on to a format called GRF, which is the global reporting format, and if you've been flying around Europe, it's the one that you're most likely to come across. So we'll tell you, for example, the same thing in GRF will say runway 13 right, so runway 13 right as is, and it'll give you a runway condition code. So that's all you need to know. Runway condition code is 5, 5, 5. So it splits the runway into 3 parts, and it tells you the first part's 5%, 5, whatever that is, good, covered in what the assessment is made for you. So you don't really need to know what, how deep or whatever. It just tell you 5, 5, 5. It's wet, and the braking action's good. That's all you care about. If they give you something along the lines of 5, 3, 2, it's from the direction of when you're landing. So 5 is where you're touching down, 3 is where you're rolling out, and 2 is probably where you're stopping. You would look at that and you would go for 2. It's just the worst case scenario, so you just imagine it's 2 across the whole runway. And then your airline or your ops might have different requirements. So if it says runway 13 right, 555, snow, 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 or sorry, wet, 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 or dry snow, dry snow, dry snow, it'll tell you how many millimeters and what the brake action. So you need to now go back and figure out what it is. So if it's 5, your company might say wet snow, you should treat it as 3 or 2. Now that's a GRF as a format for you. In our case, we've essentially worked it out that the braking conditions are good on a damp runway. Knowing Moscow, this usually means that it had rain before, and because it's so bitterly cold and quite humid because of the split between the dew point and temperature, it just means that it hasn't quite evaporated yet. Damp is not something we use in the motoring world anymore, we just call it wet, that's it. Well, now we're ending up in the damp runway, so we're going to take into account that the runway condition is wet. Let me just scratch that down here, it's going to come into handy as we prepare for our arrival. The next thing I'm going to show you is something called a point merge system, so let's get back to Navigraph here. This is what SimBrief had expected me to do. It's the Olopi arrival, pardon me, it's the Olopi arrival for an, I think this is for all runways. I don't think we're going to fly this. Just based on the fact that 13 right was the one that was prescribed, I think we're going to end up landing on runway 13 right, which is this way, southeast. And that runway is 3,500 meters long runway. The approach that I expect to fly is ILS Zulu 13 right. This is quite common in Russia. You have a single initial approach fix, and the ILS itself approach looks like an entire stop. So this one takes you off the path into what would look like a left downwind, but hold on. You then cross overhead the field and then go back in for a right downwind and turn in. And they've got some pretty interesting speed restrictions here. So that's usually that's the Moscow style specific ILS approach. And the reason I say Moscow style and specifically is because if you look here at Domodedova, this will be the Moscow city. Actually, this is probably not a great chart. Let me show you here. This is the city of Moscow, and you see over here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's actually a 61 somewhere around here. I don't know. So that's Moscow, Vnukovo, Domodedova, where we're going. Sheremetyevo. These are the 3 big airports in Moscow, and then you have Ramenskoye and Ostafyevo. I don't know about these 2. But essentially, to fit everything in the Moscow system, all of these special ILSs that we designed here, they essentially keep you away from each other, but the controllers are pretty good, and then they bring you into the one that you're meant to fly on. Here's another one, Olopi 3 November. This is primarily what is being used in Moscow. This is called a point merge system. You notice here from Irkut to Okvak all the way around, you're going to fly at 6,000 feet. In fact, Aalborg from the ILS approach, minimum 6,000, max 7,000. The reason they do that is essentially they slam you in here, and then you fly everywhere. The point is, from Irkut to Aalborg, you're already ready at 6,000. Volis to Aalborg, you're already ready at 6,000. So it's a way of spacing. So if you're used to trombones like the type you find in Dubai and Frankfurt, where they turn you base when the traffic separation permits, this is something similar, but because they can't draw big trombones around the Moscow airports, they've essentially made the trombones look like giant DME arcs. So if you have a traffic at Pubo and it's crossing to Aalborg and you're at Volis, and the air traffic controller determines there's enough space, you go fly direct to Aalborg. So it'll take you out of the arc, and all of these waypoints has a potential of converging onto one specific point, which is why it's called a point merge system. So everything merges around this one point. I think if you take a look at Burul, it's something similar. You see, you have like a system that could merge around Aalborg. Actually, this is a bit of a stretch, but yeah, here you see this point merge system around from Izolo. So that's the system we're going to fly, and it's important to brief that because if they say cancel altitude restrictions, your first thought is to fly nice and gentle, smooth descent angles, so we're not wasting a lot of fuel. But what you actually want to do is be prepared for that shortcut. Obviously, as you fly more and more, you have an idea in your head with what the situation is. So then you might track yourself. You might see an aircraft ahead of you and be like, I believe I'm following this guy. And you kind of track yourself based on his rate of descent, so you kind of follow him down. But until you get to that level of situational awareness, your idea is to be ready for that shortcut at any point. If you show up to Moscow middle of the night and you're quite tired, you're not going to be spending too much time playing the efficiency game. You're just trying to get her down safely. You'd obviously look out for heavier traffic, bigger traffic. You don't want to fly into the wake of those guys. And then you kind of plan your descent accordingly. So yeah, that's at the moment where we are in terms of the planning, and that's what I've set up in the FMC while we were away. I've set up for the ILS Zulu approach 13 right with the RNAV Olopi 3 November that we've just discussed. Another key importance here as we get closer to the Moscow FIR is it gets really busy, so it's wise to have everything set up and a brief completed before we get to while we're here already at Kekpa. So let me just do a quick one. We've already discussed the point merit system, Olopi. All the plans are in. Moscow, I know from my time here, Moscow has a requirement for 270 knots on the descent. That's going to mess up our descent a little bit. It's not a hard requirement. It was one that was coded in before. You can see also there the arrival at Olopi shows you at 270 knots, specifically already pre-coded. And what I like to do is I just like to fly the whole descent. Whatever Mach number is econ, but then I transition on to 270 knots, indicated airspeed before the descent, just to comply with what I know Moscow approach controllers or center controllers require. Let me bring you back once again to Navigraph and SimBrief. We have set that up. We've talked about the whole Olopi arrival, Grimfa, da-di-da-di-da, point merge, 220 knots. You see constant speed across the whole thing. And then we go to Albor. From this chart, we got all of this going on. I'm going to track it on my iPad here on the side as we go along, because it's there's quite a lot of waypoints you can't really have in your head, so we're going to track at each waypoint as we go along. And we're going to use a manage mode for our systems. But you can also see me possibly use a lot of vertical speed just to keep a nice constant descent going, which is great for our how would you call it? Well, sorry, I apologize. Well, that's great for our fuel savings and noise and all that stuff. So that's what we're going to do. From this chart, I just want a few main ideas. And you want to make sure that we have the 1101, which will be India Delta Mike. That's the localizer frequency. We want to make sure we identify that. Final approach course 135. That's how we're going to know we are approaching the right runway, perhaps. We also want a decision altitude, which is 792. We're going to round it up to a nice 800 because I cannot fly with 8-foot precision. Transition level 110 if pressure is less than 1013, so they've got different requirements. Pressure is 1016, so transition level is going to be 110 as far as I'm concerned for our descent. So I got the frequency, the inbound cost, and the minimums. The missed approach, we're going to stop the altitude at, I think it's 6,000 feet. Climb to 3,000, then to Gufus, mandatory at 5,000. So we stop at 3, then we go to 5, and then we go to 5. So it's a step sort of missed approach without clearance. So the first altitude I'm going to set is going to be 3,000 feet for the missed approach. After landing, the terminal is going to be out on the left side, so I think Alpha 8 or Alpha 7 is a good route. I might consider Alpha 7, wind is light. I'm going to profit off Alpha 7 because it'll be a nice short taxi as well. So we're going to prepare for the Alpha 7 for arrival, exit Alpha 7, intersection Alpha 7. That reminded me, I'd seen something here just now. So when it comes to cold weather, or when you have temperatures below or at 0 degrees Celsius, you do something called a cold weather altitude correction. Basically, what's 1,000 feet usually may not be 1,000 feet anymore when it's cold weather operations. Reason being because 1,000 feet. Okay, that's a better way to state. Say you're cruising at 2,000 feet. Everything's well, and you are 1,000 foot above any other obstacle in the area. When the air is colder, everything is sort of denser, more tightly packed. Yeah, the obstacle is still at 1,000 because it's a fixed thing, but your altimetry changes according to the density of the altitude. So 2,000, which might give you a 1,000-foot margin in normal weather conditions, say 15 degrees or something. When you get to 0, that might actually just give you only 800, 500. So we do something where we correct all the altitudes as we get lower, just so that we still get to retain the margin of safety. Which then brings me nicely onto the point that we had seen here for the Alopi arrival, was it? Or on the Isla Zulu chart? Yep, it was the Isla Zulu chart. Let me show you again very quickly on Navigraph. So here's the Isla Zulu chart. And as you can see here, MSA ARP is computed for a surface air temperature of APT minus 20, at airport of 27.6. So basically what it's telling you is we've taken the work out of it. You don't need to worry. The airport is calibrated to minus 27.6. So until it goes to like minus 28 or 27.7, you don't need to be corrected for the altitude because it's sorted. Just relax. Which is great information to have. It doesn't say so on my Lido, and I do wish it did, because that does save us a lot of heartache. You know, we correct for anything below 0. Sometimes it's published with no time, which is the only way I get to know. And if I don't know, we just err on the side of caution. Good. So we've talked about that. Let's do our landing performance. Yeah. Over here, let's use the inbuilt performance calculator. We're landing in Moscow Domodedovo. Do you all think I need a little bit more lighting here, perhaps? What's the brightness? Hope that's good enough. So we in Moscow, runway condition, no. We've got 5. You see, we got a good. That's what. All of this, you get a table, so you can convert from whatever they had set in our runway assessment code to the global reporting format, which most airlines use. And I did that already, and the runway condition code was 5. So it's going to be a normal landing. We're not going to do an auto land. There's no requirement. We're going to go try how we can stop a configuration full. Engine anti-ice is likely going to be on, especially if it's damp. The reason is we want to stop ice forming on the lip. I know it says it's greater than 0, but we're coming through an atmosphere that's colder, and the lip is likely. It's quite cold out there right now. How cold is it here? It's currently minus 60 degrees outside, so obviously our lip is going to be very cold. So even though it's not raining, as we bring that cowl of the engine closer to the runway where it's damp, there's a chance that we ingest some water, and that water tends to freeze on contact with the cold cowl, and then that's where we get the ice forming. Not a big deal if you get a little bit of rime ice, but if you spend a decent amount of time and the rime ice builds quite thick, every time you add power, there's a possibility it dislodges a block of ice, and then that goes into the engine, and of course the engine's damaged. So we're going to prevent that, so we're going to use engine anti-ice on. Reversers, we're going to go with none. We're obviously going to use the reversers, but that is additional, let's call it insurance on the back of my pocket. So it says 73.2 estimated landing weight. I'm pretty happy with that. We're currently at 74.4, and we're going to land with 4 tons, which is 900 kilos less. So maybe we should just go with 73.4. Let's take, let's not take a ton less. Let's go with the current weight. We're only going to get lighter. So landing weight in Moscow, Moscow Domodedovo. The runway, well, this one has got different runway identifiers. Let's go ahead and set 14 right. And let's calculate what our landing looks like. Good, that's what it says. With auto brakes medium, we can expect 1921, and this is a factored landing distance of 2209. We just want to make sure this stays in the runway, and I'm going to use this more for planning. So we're going to use our configuration 3 and brakes medium with idle reverse, and that should bring us to a nice quick stop. I'm not overly concerned about brake energy today because it's so cold. I think we're going to be able to dissipate all of that very quickly in terms of heat, and it's not a long taxi. As we discussed earlier, transition level here is 110. The barrel altimeter that we had also discussed, we're rounding it up to 800 feet. QNH, I think I've forgotten already. It's 1 degree, and I've also forgotten the wind. Pardon me, folks, I'm just going to take a quick peek at Navigraph to see what it had said. Oh, now they have published an ATC. Like I said, it's 1-3 right. Measured by SFT. Variable between 150 and 210. Worst case would be 210 at 3 meters per second. So 210 at 6 is what we're going for. So that gives us probably the worst tailwind. So that's what we're concerned with, the worst case scenario. And QNH 1016. Good. So that's set up. Let's just make sure we have on our radio nav India Delta Mike 1101. That's set up as well. Frequency inbound course minimums. It's all set up, and it looks like we are ready for our approach and commencing our arrival now into Moscow Domodedovo. Honestly, I expected them to already contact me. We're still waiting for that contact me message. Let's see how much longer that's going to take. Pardon me, I'm going to go jump into this iPad here. Oh, the group chat is kicking off, I can tell you that. There's a contact me. Please let me know if you can hear the contact as we go along. 127.5. Shark. What a cool call sign. 127.5. Alright.
007 Москва контроль, здравствуйте. Сквот 2741.
Quite loud. Let me turn that down a bit. Okay, so hopefully you guys hear me a little bit more than the air traffic. I can barely hear myself talk. It's quite loud in here. Alright, let's say hello. Okay, can't seem to get a gap to actually say hello. Just give us a second. Hopefully we get a gap soon. Moscow Control, good evening. Shark 715, flight level 340. That's us, Shark. Alright, stand by. Okay, so I think it's going to be a bit of time till he's ready. So what I'm going to do is slow down so it takes me a little longer to get to the top of the drop. And that's important because I can use the energy that I'm now saving. Yeah, so I can use that energy that I'm sort of saving to essentially now dive for the dive for it when the time comes. So I can just jump in, you know. So it's kind of like slowing down here. Okay, the path has now gone below me, and then I can just dive. Yeah, so that's kind of what we're attempting to do, just so we don't lose the profile too much. All right, so a note to self, because the status of the aircraft, right window heat isn't working, so we're not supposed to use that. A lot of Russian speakers. But we're still waiting for them to identify us. I mean, we've already checked in, and we're just being advised to stand by. While we stand by, we can take a look at our airplane. Cannot shark. I don't know if it means something, whether it's somebody's name, but if your name is Shark, you're right in my books. It'd be cool if I had an add-on like cheese or something. Okay, so we are now going to get into an area of problems, because we're now reaching our top of descent, and we have not yet been given clearance to descend. Just part of what I'm doing here, I've now reduced the speed to 7.5 to just kind of hold the speed back a little bit, and I can use that saved or stored energy to just to go downhill, essentially, right? It's unlikely we're going to now make the 200 restriction at LOP, but I'm quite glad I set that to 270, so now I can kind of hold so at least have the right sort of path going along. You might see a message that says top of descent reached or something along those lines. Decelerate, yep, that's a message. I didn't want it to decelerate too far, which is why I've gone into managed speed, so I'm not, sorry, to pilot control speed, so we're not getting to a point where the airplane is now decelerating on its own far too much. So I think at the moment this is going to work out just fine for us. I think I have a nice cup of tea as well. Okay, so you can see now 1,200 feet. That green dot there is the pop, and it's already below us. Those numbers, 1.5, is indicating that the ideal descent path is 1,600 feet below. That's us. Squawk 2715, Shark 715. Okay, Squawk 2715, that's us. Dobry wieczór, Moscow. 2715 is set. We should be able to identify us now. All right. Pilot's discretion, descent level 200, level by LOP. Shark 715 descending now. Okay, let's get that started. We are going 200, thrust idle descent. We got 3,000 feet to catch up. So what I'm gonna let the airplane do, you see that there? That drop it's got. Just because we'd slowed down earlier, we're now letting the airplane drop and accelerate at the same time. So it's gonna be able to do a steeper rate descent. As you can see, it's doing now 2.5 above, 2.4 above, and we'll slowly catch up to it. Right now the speed brakes are still in. I'll bring the speed brakes out shortly, just to avoid discomfort. I'm gonna wait till I'm on the speed, and then we're gonna bring the speed brakes out about halfway through to the trick. Alright, if you can't see it, this is where the speed brakes are. Let's try to get some lights in here so you can see the spoilers come out. There it is, that's the spoilers. It's gonna come out shortly. But the aircraft is essentially now accelerating up to that pink line in order to catch the path. Don't think that's going to be quite enough because it's still about 900 feet. So it's going to catch the path, and then we're going to it's going to catch the path. I do believe it's going to catch the path, but it's not going to be able to decelerate back to 270. So once it catches the pot, once the green dot matches, I'm going to pull the brakes out a little bit to let it slow down. Let's see. All right, so she's stuck at 290 knots, doing 2,200, and that path isn't moving all that much. So I'm going to give it a little bit of assistance with the speed brakes. I think half of the speed brakes should be satisfactory for her. Yeah, quarter of the speed brake should be satisfactory. Yep, she's coming back to it. All right, we're on the path, we're coming back up on the speed, and the speed brakes are now stowed. Let's take a look. We might have spelled shark incorrectly, but yeah. Alright, so I've been told it's a bit too dark, so let me get some lights on. We try to keep it a little bit dark so we can feel more engrossed, and we can let the airplane do a majority of the work here. So, on the speed, on the path, speed brake stowed. Not bullseye. As we get closer, we haven't been cleared yet for an arrival, so we're gonna just now check with Dova what arrival they require. So he's controlling literally everything, eh? So he's a bit likely going to be a bit rushed. To keep you advised, we're just waiting now for confirmation which arrival we're going to do. Either it's the Alopi 3 Lima or the 3 November. I'm leaning towards 3 November, because that's going to also give him more time to deal with all the traffic, especially when we do the point mode system I discussed earlier. Right, so let me tell you a little bit more about the airplane we're flying. This aircraft is an Airbus A321 NEO, and it's currently in delivery of an airline called Qanot Shark. From Uzbekistan. It's one of two airlines I think I know in Uzbekistan. One is Uzbekistan Airways, and the other one is this one right here, Qanot Shark. Both pretty good airlines, I guess. I mean, Qanot Shark is sort of new to me. I believe they've been around for close to 20-something years, maybe even close to 30 years. Around 2012 they went bust, and now they're back on the scene. Alright, so we're reaching Alopi. I need to be below flight level 200 at 270 knots, so I'm gonna go ahead and force it to do 270 knots speed, 200. And there's no need descending that quickly, especially if you haven't got further clearance. You're gonna go speed, vertical speed, and do 1,000 foot per minute. Nice, comfortable rounding off of the descent. We've been moving for about 3 hours and 47 minutes, so it's been 3 hours 47 minutes since the first we just started, 3 hours 35 since we started our takeoff roll en route to Donokova. Domodedova. Another 500 to level, let's go ahead and set this to 500. So the Russian language RT is very true to life. It's quite common that while you're flying in Russia and often in countries that have had, well, let's say former USSR countries or states that were part of the USSR, it's quite common for them to have a little bit of RT in Russian or in their local language. So having this in VATSIM obviously quite realistic. Okay. So we still don't know what the arrival is, so he needs to let me know by Ocben, because then I need to know who the point merge or the other one is. So ask now. Follow B3 November arrival, ILS Yankee, runway 13 right, all-board transition, Shark 175. Okay, so it's the ILS Yankee. When ready, descend to Tulsa, correction, when ready, direct to Tulsa, descend 2,500 feet, QNH 1016, Shark 175. Okay, so that changed a bit. Is that waypoint on the Zulu arrival? No, so I kind of need to change this up. So the arrival is now the ILS 13 right Yankee arrival via Olbor, yes. And we were cleared on the all-up B3 November. Let's go ahead to the temporary flight plan, verify we've got everything ish. So we're now going to select a direct to position RIFMA. Insert erase temporary first. Okay, fine. I'm going to go ahead and fly a heading for a second. Insert this temporary and then fly direct to waypoint RIFMA. Insert direct to. So that's sort of sorted out now. And back to nav. Just going to take a quick look at the plan. The ILS Yankee approach, still the point merge like before, but now instead of going, as you can see there, now instead of going across the field, we're sort of doing something like this. And we'll be clear direct to this waypoint, Tulsa, descending to 2,500 feet. So that was all at pilot's discretion, so we're now ready, and we're going to fly direct to Tulsa. And insert direct to Tulsa. We're also cleared to 2,500 feet. 2,500 feet. Now we can get that descent started nice and slow. Speed descent, the alt and pink. Oh wow, someone's declared a pan. So if you don't know what pan is, there are various levels of distress when it comes to operating off a jet airliner. So the first level is pan. So pan basically means, hey, I have an urgency, or I have something that requires attention. However, at this time it is not life-threatening. Yeah, so you need assistance, but it's not all hell breaks loose. The next one is a mayday, which implies that there is a potential threat to life or airplane. So that's the kind of the difference I can tell you. Pan maybe honestly I can't think of a lot of pan situations. You could declare a pan, say you're now coming into Moscow and your flaps are stuck. I wouldn't call it a mayday, I'd call it a pan. And with the pan, I get a little level of priority, and I can go off somewhere and try to fix the problem. And now if I can't fix the problem, and now I need to land with flaps up on a runway that's icy and my options are going down, and they're very busy, that would say mayday. So I am the priority, and that gives me what I need to get down on the runway. Essentially, I'll be like, okay, get everyone off my way. This is what I'm going for. It's essentially priority, your VVIP pass versus your VIP pass. So this gentleman has declared pan-pan. It's the first time I've heard anyone say pan-pan in Russian, and he has obviously given a reason why, I suppose. But we don't know yet, or I don't know yet what the reason is. If you do, please let me know. I'm curious what the pan-pan is. 7600, no, 7600 is for loss of comms. 7700 would mean a general emergency, and 75 is unlawful interference. That's how we like to call it now. Okay, close to speed, it's all managed. Descend to 2500, 1016. That being said, however, the European Union now has a different sort of comm failure procedure. It's very good that you brought it up because that's something I should know, but let's take a look. It was standard communication failure procedures. Fantastic. That was ICAO Annex 10. Oh, well, I need to find it now because there was something very specific for operations within the European Union. It's quite recent, if I might say. In the grand scheme of things, when it comes to aviation, quite recent. So our thrust has now gone to idle. We're descending on idle thrust. We're going to get to Tulsa between 7 and 6 at 220 knots. So all of that's managed, taken care of. Dobry wieczór, bled. Obviously, you don't want to actually say that in Russia because you are a professional, so we don't actually say things like that. Voice communication failure, you transmit blind repeater failure. We're not quite interested in ATC procedures. Yeah, so that's those changes are something I should know, or something we should be talking about today. I don't know why I don't know that. That's not quite nice, but there have been some changes with regard to changes with the loss of communication procedures, specifically within the European Union. We squawk a different code now. It's not 7600. We squawk different codes depending on what you intend to do. I believe it was 7200, but I don't want to lie to you without actually having found the information. All right, I'm gonna put that down for homework because that seems pretty important. All right, still at 13,000 feet, a long way to go. This is usually the boring part of the flight. It's a while. It takes a while to get down, especially with busy airports because you've got lots of stops and you've got to modulate your rate of descent. Oh, you can see out there a little bit of traffic. And that being said, it sounds a lot busier than it usually is, and the reason for that is this chap who's now controlling, he is going through a test. So he's there and he's got someone else watching his scope, and now he's handling the situation. Basically, he's working on his permissions, I guess, to control Moscow Center. Of course, it's quite a big area to control, and like I said, it's got 3 major airports and 2 more minor ones, 5 airports within the Moscow area. And given that that's the amount of airports he's dealing with, he's doing a fantastic job. All right, so if you recall, airfield is at 500 feet. Let's go ahead and do an open descent. The reason why we're going to duck under a little bit is because we have here a status message. The right-hand window heat doesn't work. And the way we deal with that is by reducing 1016 as the QNH here. I'll set that up 1016 on both sides. Yeah, so because the window heat doesn't work, the window is not as pliable, so it doesn't bend as well. So as a precaution to prevent damage from bird strikes, we reduce the speed so that the impact is less violent. So that's it. At 10,000 feet above the airfield, we're coming back to 250 knots. And we should be here between 7 and 6, so be additionally careful that is in fact complied with. And this is 10,000 feet, so the lights can go on and the seatbelts can go on. Let's take a look at what the plane looks like now with the lights on. Oh yeah. Cannot shark. Can or cannot. There is no shark. Very nice. We're still keeping that track, and bear in mind this track is also programmed to decelerate us at position Tosla to 220 knots. What that means for us, 220 knots is exactly clean speed. That's the most efficient speed you could possibly fly. I'm also going to do a flaps 3 landing, so I need to be telling the ground proximity warning system that's flaps 3. It's going to scream at me and say, oh my god, you don't have landing flaps. But now she knows that I'm not landing with full flaps, so I'm going to land with flaps 3, so she should calm down and not cry about it. Alright, so while we do that, I've also got some information for you with regards to the COM failure procedures as mandated by the European Union. It's specifically for the European Union. So they start if, they try to reach you a couple times. Of course, if they don't reach you, then they try to tell other airplanes to reach you, so on and so forth. That's practically it. But if you're an IFR flight, you maintain your last assigned speed and level or minimum flight altitude higher for a period of 20 minutes following the aircraft's failure to make a required report. On the or the time from the transponder set 716 US pilots could know your comms aren't working because you try to talk to a bunch of different people. You don't hear it. Eventually you try different frequencies. The previous one you went on, somebody else in and around. You try your best. When you realize you've probably lost your comms, you then go 7600. You can reduce the rate of descent here to 1,200 feet per minute. And we can go ahead and set 220 here. So you see those lights flashing, blinking. That to me means we're going in and out of clouds, and I can see clouds there as well. So what we're going to do at this point is preemptively turn on the engine ATIs. I don't think you actually need to do this on a 320. On a 320, I believe it'll tell you when. It'll say, hey, ICE detected, turn on the engine ATIs. But on a 737, you kind of have to look at the conditions. So the conditions required temperature is below 10 degrees. At the moment we are +2, and visible moisture, which I think the clouds count as. So I'm going to go ahead and set this. We're going to stop at 6,000 feet because that's what we were cleared to do. $6,000 feet. We're going to stop there at 220 knots. Close the speed here. Altitude managed. Nope, don't need you to speed up, please. 220 knots. 6,000 feet. Or we're being cleared to 2.5. And I've advised it to continue descent to 2,500 feet. But that dot there means it's complying with this pink altitude construction between 6 and 7. I'm not sure why it didn't do the speed 2. It was supposed to have done 220 knots. I'm just curious, if I let it go, would she do it? She does. She maintains 220 knots. Very nice. The next, she's going to limit herself to 4,000 feet. But I'm of the opinion that We just need to get below 5, and then I'm going to round her up because it's quite a steep 30%. Sorry, so basically you will need to land at the nearest suitable airport essentially. If you're in visual conditions and you opt to fly visually to land somewhere in the European Union, you would set 7601. That's really the only change. Visual flight, land at the nearest suitable airport, call it a day. That's 7601. Alright, below 5, this is what everything else wants. And now I can sort of level her off, make her go at 1,000 feet per minute, 500 feet per minute. And I'm going to stop that descent at 4,000 feet, just so I don't bust anything. So I'm 4,000 feet, limited to 4,000 feet, all the way until waypoint Ospor, that's there, and that's a good 15 miles away. I do think he's going to have me fly the whole thing because he's quite busy by the sound of it. If you can hear it as well. The tail lights of the A320. It's set on auto. I believe it comes on when I set the first set of flaps. But for now, it's just the landing lights. Good question though. I mean, yeah. So it's nav and logo lights. So it's sort of auto controlled. Alright, leveling up at 4,000. This is where we're going to be all the way until we get to Kate's. I'm not entirely interested in flying the whole thing, so I'd like to see how far away Delta 014 is from the runway. And hopefully we can get a little bit of a shortcut. It's too close, 4 miles. Okay, well I guess we're going to do the whole thing. Flight and level at 4,000 feet. We're passing a beamed at Domodedovo Airport. Can't see it at the moment because the landing lights in the clouds. But I promise you it's right there. Huh? No, that's not it. Something else that's not well depicted, I don't know what it is. I believe it's because the Central European steppe is quite vast. It's very bumpy around Moscow literally all the time. This is Domodedovo. As you can see, you can't really see the runway, but you can make out that for the terminal and some of the apron lights. You won't see the runway until we turn on to final, which is the way that the lights are aligned. So yeah, that's great. Getting closer. It's selecting 151 knots. I'm not entirely sure why. Ah, she's gone onto approach mode. That's probably why. Okay, not quite what we want. So let's just control the speed at 220. So we're taking over speed control here. At Ospor, I'm required to be at 4,000 feet at 200 knots. So let's try to do that. Let's get the ILS bugs ready to work. LS and LS. And the Delta Mike Delta BOR is active, 7 miles away from the Domodedovo Airport. Well, you can see he's quite busy. He's busy frequency. Major respect for the guy for handling all of it, of course. It's not something I could do. So we need to be at 200 knots at Ospor. We're currently doing 220. If I need to go below the green dot speed or the clean speed, I'll need flaps. And I'm trying to avoid putting the flaps off for 2 reasons. Putting the flaps out generates noise for the people down here in the Moscow metro area. Also increases fuel burn, and in icing conditions also gives the possibility of ice to form between the flaps, which is probably my biggest concern. But at the moment we're about to reach 200 knots, so let's go ahead and set our first notch of flaps for this evening, flaps 1. Flaps 1 is coming out, and we can go ahead and set 200 knots, which is what's required at Ospor. And for the person who was asking about the tail light, that comes on now with the selection of the first set of flaps. That's cannot shock. It looks like a basketball and either an eagle or a turtle that has the respective line. So maybe not the most exciting livery in the world, but still says shark, albeit misspelled, but sharks are sharks. So that's pretty cool. Excuse me. So we've been cleared to 2,500. The next altitude is 3,000. I'm going to go ahead and set that there. We're going to do a 75. Cleared Islands Yankee runway 13 right. We'll call you on final. Shark 175. All right, advice. 180 knots is required there. So let's go ahead and set the next notch of flaps 2. That also gives us permission to set 180 knots. There we go. 180. According to my charts, it's not below 180, it's exactly at 180, and I need to do that all the at Cates as well, which is only about 7 miles, which makes decelerating for the landing quite challenging. So we're going to come up with a plan to sort that out. Alright, 10 miles out from the ILS at the moment. Lateral navigation is going to, sorry, 5 minutes, let's do a descent. Lateral navigation is going to take care of that initial turn, and once I'm essentially turned onto final, I'll on the approach mode for the ILS. Alright, lateral navigation, taking care of it. Turning onto Moscow Domodedovo. 10 miles out. Sensing is all good, and we're going to go ahead and arm the approach mode. And autopilot 2. Cat 3 single, autopilot 1 and 2, Cat 3 dual, which is ready to take it. Alright, so I'm going to need a lot of drag once I get there. So we're going to get the drag ready to go. So we're going to drop the landing gear shortly. Mr. Approach altitude 3000, that's already set. Alright, let's get the gear down. The gear is going down there. Very nice, we're gonna cross Cates at 180. There's a runway in sight. 3, 2, 1. There we go to 160 knots here. Speed brakes are armed. We're just waiting for final landing flaps.
2000.
Let's go ahead and set the final landing flaps, get the landing checklist up for it. Shark 175 established, ILS Yankee 13 right. Still waiting for landing clearance. Let's slow down the airplane now. Okay, getting a bit angsty now, we might wait. Center Shark 175, ILS 13 right. Tail end only 13 right, Shark 715. Maybe that's my fault, I was getting the wrong call sign. Alright, we've been cleared to land. Everyone, oh shit, knocked the throttles. Alright, let's have a good time with this landing, hopefully it works out. Double click.
400.
Not sure why the approach mode turned off, but that's what we want. Glide slot lock. Here we go.
300.
321 is a long body. We're going to be extra careful when we flare. Losing the glide slope a bit, it's about a half a knot below. Puppies are looking okay. There we go,
200.
let's go fly with the visual aiming point now, forget the localizing glide slope. Slightly below, and now we're slightly
100.
high again. Looking okay.
50, 40, 30, 20, retard. 10,
Right.
10,
Deep
5,
landing. Not exactly something to be proud of, but I'm not entirely disappointed if I'm being honest. Let's take over the brake.
Auto brake off.
Four hours and 2 minutes. Let's go ahead and set the timer for a shutdown. Let's take this exit. This is exit Alpha 8. Okay, still have speed brakes. Haven't really flown through icing that I would consider critical, so we can go ahead and raise the flaps. Let's take the second left, shall we? Or let's just take this left. I don't know how good the scenery is, so let's not take risks. Let's take this left here. We're turning back onto taxiway. Mike. Bit of a float there. I'm not really sure what happened, which means it's probably realistic, true to life. Not really sure what happens true to life as well. We'll get all these lights off. Let's see. I'm not going to trouble him with my problems here. 4 hours of flight, wasn't it? Yeah, he's giving immediate right headings and stuff, so I don't need to particularly trouble. So let's take the next right. I don't actually know where Cannot Shark parks, so that's another problem we need to figure out. Obviously at the terminal, but we don't know which pier yet. You know, if nobody was watching, I'd probably say it was a good landing, but since it's on stream, it's going to be on for a while, we know that's not entirely true. I can already tell you I have scenery problems here. So we're going to slow down for a second. Parking brake set. We're going to assess now if... well, we're going to assess what the parking spot is. Yeah? We're going to talk to the... we're going to talk to the company and we'll find out now. So, Cannot Shark Terminal 715 was a flight number, yeah? Can tell you. TME terminal. Obviously terminal need 2, 1 we want to know. Tashkent, depart terminal 2. Jesus, I don't know. Okay, we're gonna do our best, okay? Let's go ahead, it's been 3 minutes, let's shut down engine number 1. Engine number 1 is off for engine. I don't know if it's better to tell him what I'm doing or just to just do my own thing, because he's obviously quite busy. So if you are his guy who's doing his check, I think he did a fantastic job. Just give him a moment, please. So I think I'm gonna go stop at Pier Echo, which is all the way on the other end. Options, I think it was. External controls, GSX, that's the one I want. And we're gonna tell GSX that we're gonna park somewhere else. Options. Guys, come on. Gate, yes. I don't know how I got there, but we are definitely a gate. Next page. Next page. Yeah, I can do gate 24. Gate 24, please. Request follow me, no. Yeah, Domorodova handling. That's good for me. Gate 24. Okay, folks, you can see there are these little bumps on the taxiway because it's uneven for whatever reason. I have scenery from the Polish guy, Truski design. His landmarks for Moscow, and now we're gonna feel the bump. Yep, there we go. Yes, and now we're gonna feel the bump down. That's why I'm not braking for this, because I need the momentum. There we go, down and back up. If somebody's got minimum fuel, I go to Sheremetyevo Airport because Virginia, Nizhny Novgorod is closed. Good. So maybe it was not wise to do single engine taxi here. See, I don't know if you guys saw the bus just jump across these bumps here. 13 knots. Apparently this doesn't go straight. Holy shit. Okay, don't worry, we'll go straight. We'll make a plan. Okay. I don't know, honestly, I really don't know. My map says that I can go straight. Or maybe not. Okay, here's another dip. That down there on the left side is my stand, somewhere there. Let's go. Okay, well technically I'm supposed to take Hotel 1, that was a work in progress in Hotel 2. Mistakes were made, we've learned from them, that's what's important. 24, this is 27, fantastic. I am not going to be able to park there. Let's see if I can't change it to a different position, maybe position 20. 23, oh, 20. 20 looks healthy. Let's go to parking position 20, we can change that. Options, return, GSX. Oh, request. There we go. We're going to select a different gate. Specifically, we're going to go ahead and select gate 20, where we can actually park. Gate 20, fantastic. No follow me, and the overhead handling's fine. Fantastic, let's go ahead and start the APU. Turn off the runway, turn off lights. This is 20. Fantastic, we're gonna go turn in here. Stand 20. can take off the taxi lights here. We don't need that anymore. APU's coming on. Let's go ahead and make sure the weather radar is off. Don't want to kill anybody's Friday babies. Fantastic, and we have no marshaller. Okay guys, so it's been 4 hours of flight, so we're just gonna go ahead and park ourselves. No point cancelling a flight that's already here just because we don't have so much about the park. Cannot shark. Cannot shark, I don't know how it's pronounced. Idle thrust. Let's get her all the way to the end. Moving right, steady, and brakes. Ladies and gents, we made it. One piece, we are now in Domodedova. Parking brakes are set. APU is available, we can shut down the engine. That brings us to the end of a 4-hour and 23-minute flight. We flew from Tashkent to Moscow to Doma. We made quite a mid-landing. In all honesty, it was not the best, not the worst, but we're here. We haven't died, folks. That's it. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining the journey, and I do hope we'll see you around the next time, maybe, and. Yeah, we'll wait for another adventure, I guess. Maybe tomorrow, maybe not. Let me know what you like. Please follow, like, comment, subscribe to all the stuff. This is just a fun channel, maybe a little bit educational. I would love to have more interaction with everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. One last look at our bird for today. Cannot shark. Visit Uzbekistan. Oops. It's a good thing we did that look because we actually haven't finished our procedures. Beacon lights off, seatbelts off, engine ITIs can go off, we can put that back to standard,
The boarding requested.
and that's it. Alright guys, goodbye, thanks for joining me, and we'll see you.